Thanks, Alana. Good afternoon and you're welcome to the second of our lunchtime general election debates ahead of polling day 2 weeks from today. As of today, 16 candidates are battling out in Mayo, a 5-seater constituency, this time round having gained a seat in the constituency review. The latest time for receiving nominations to run for the 34th Dáil is 12 noon tomorrow. Candidates who want to withdraw their nominations have until 12 noon on Monday then to do so. In studio today we have the Minister of State with responsibility for local government and planning, Castlebar-based candidate Alan Dillon, Erris-based candidate Sinn Féin Deputy Rose Conway Walsh, and Castlebar-based independent candidate Stephen Kerr. Now, what candidates say during the debate is their responsibility. We ask you to be courteous and not to speak over each other, and if any candidate persists, we'll simply cancel your microphone. So we're asking you all to please play fair. Now, candidates, you're all very welcome, and we'll get started. And for each candidate to get started, I'm asking that in less than a minute, tell me what's the single major issue for you ahead of polling day. Alan.
Good afternoon, Teresa. The single biggest issue I'm hearing on the doorsteps is the cost of living, and it's coming up a lot. Everyone is affected differently, be it the cost of housing, rent, childcare, fuel or utility bills, and many factors have influenced the surge in prices, the war in Ukraine, the inflationary crisis and the pandemic. And in fairness, government has responded and taken a number of immediate and long-term measures, and that has been seen in the most recent budgets, 2 consecutive budgets, billion euro packages in order to address the scale of the challenge. And indeed, families right across the county has seen many of these payments being lodged in their accounts. We've seen €300 in fuel allowance lump sum, €400 in lump sums for disability, invalidity and blind pension.
Issue for you. Okay, Deputy Rose Conway Walsh, what's the main issue you see and is coming before you ahead of polling day?
Hi Teresa, I'd say the cost of living as well, and I thought one young person put it well to me last night when they were talking about the extortionate costs of rent, when they said bypass the paycheck into your landlord's account and that was it. By the time they had paid the rent there was nothing left. But there's also, in terms of groceries, obviously the cost people know when they go into shops. Now part of that as well is the carbon tax and what it takes to transport goods, and the excise that's on that, insurance for home and for car insurance, childcare, fuel, the healthcare, disability, student accommodation.
Okay, so you're lots of issues really.
But it all impacts on the cost of living and how people are really trying to survive in this day and age, and the once-off payments don't cut it.
Okay, and Stephen, as you go on the door to door, what's the single major issue that you're coming across?
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah. I mean, I agree that the cost of living is a huge issue, and I'd like an opportunity at some point during this chat to discuss that in more detail. Through my online media platform, The Irish Inquiry, I've highlighted a load of issues over the last couple of years, but in recent times, over the last 2 years, I suppose the big issue that I've been highlighting is in relation to uncontrolled mass immigration. The numbers.
Yeah, but I'm asking you what in the run-up to the polling day, what are you meeting most now, not 2 years ago?
Well, absolutely. Over the last 2 years, this is the big issue. This is the big issue that everybody is talking to me about, and it's the big issue. It's the only issue actually that isn't being spoken about by other politicians really, to the degree that it should be, to the degree that people in the door think it should be, and as well as that, it never really comes up it may come up here, I'm sure, but on the likes of RT on the state broadcaster, they seem to forget that immigration is a massive, uncontrolled mass immigration. The numbers of people coming into... Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Okay, well, with that then, now just to say, we've asked listeners for questions and we'll try to get through as many as possible of those questions as we can. Minister Dillon, I'm going to start with you. Yesterday, Taoiseach Simon Harris said he doesn't know why Fine Gael expelled Councillor Patsy O'Brien, who's now an independent councillor, from the Fine Gael party 4 years ago. Now, Councillor O'Brien is running as an independent candidate in the general election in this constituency at present. And the basic question, do you know why the councillor was expelled?
Well, listen, Teresa, I know it was put to the Taoiseach yesterday, and I'm not familiar with the actual reason for the internal investigation myself. I know a complaint was made against Councillor O'Brien back in March 2020, and subsequent he was expelled in October 2020 following the conclusion of the investigation. But I think it's open to Councillor O'Brien himself to clarify this before people make their decision on their
and in
future
fairness,
TDs.
we did contact Councillor O'Brien this morning and he declined to comment. So with that, we'll move on then. Now, in the context of healthcare, how concerned are candidates about the pressures caused by overcrowding? There's a listener question at Mayo University Hospital. What are you doing to address it? What will you do to address it? How are you going to entice nurses to work in Mayo University Hospital? And then just from one person, he's described himself as an OAP, age 72. He'd been suffering with chest pains. He was brought to Mayo University Hospital. He describes how he'd been in ED for a while, then he got a bed, then he went home. He feels just as bad. He had to get out because the hospital was full. Look, what are you saying, Deputy Rose Conway Walsh, to these people? What can you do different as Sinn Féin, or what would Sinn Féin do different in government that would make it better for people in Mayo?
Yeah, sure. There's two issues. Basically, it's the space, so it's the capital investment that's needed in there. But also, we know in Mayo University Hospital at the moment there are 82 whole-time equivalent staff shortage if they were to do safe staffing measures. So what we would do is recruit 40,000 healthcare workers over the term of government, but we would deliver as well 5,000 extra hospital beds and 2,000 community beds as well. And that would solve the problem that we have.
And would they come to Mayo and would they work at Mayo University Hospital? You're talking national figures.
Yeah, sure. I'd make absolutely certain that they do. And that's not only the staff for Mayo University Hospital, for Belmullet Hospital, Ballina and Swinford as well, because that's part of the problem. We don't have connectivity between community care, social care and acute care that's needed in the county. It's absolutely been destroyed over the last 20 years.
OK. Stephen, I'm sure overcrowding in ED at Mayo University Hospital, you have met that on the doorstep too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's of course, and whether it's hospitals or doctor's appointments, a lot of these issues are a knock-on effect of what I've said previously, our uncontrolled mass immigration situation. So with the healthcare system, huge problems. If you look at the budget in 2015, 13 billion budget for the health service in 2015. As of 2023, it was over 23 billion, up 10 billion.
Yeah, so they're throwing money at it.
They're throwing money, but the thing is, there's a lot of, it's complete mismanagement and waste seems to be the problem a lot of the time. Now, I want to mention a couple of things on health as well, if I could. One thing that I don't think any of the candidates running will mention, now there are numerous problems with the healthcare system at the moment, but this is a big one nobody else is going to mention, so I want to mention it. The last 2 years, we've seen a huge rise in excess mortality rates. The deaths in this county, or in this country, they're off the charts. They're unprecedented. We've never seen them before. And there seems to be no explanation as to why there are so many people dying.
Okay, so you want an answer. We don't have it. We don't want to speculate on answers.
All I want to say is that I will be calling for a properly independent public inquiry to find out the reason as to those high levels of excess deaths.
Okay, Minister Dillon, you are a minister in a government where probably the greatest fear of many in Mayo is that they have to get to Mayo University Hospital because they won't get a bed. Not because the care is wonderful when they get there, but it's to get into the system. Many are fearful.
Well, firstly, I sympathise with anyone that has to wait on a trolley for a long duration. But however, we are investing significantly in our capital programme. I'm driven the project delivery of the new emergency and at the Accident Emergency Unit in Mayo University Hospital. There's key enabling works that are happening at the minute. Planning has been approved and certainly this will make an enormous difference to ensure
so
that...
It's so protracted. It's going on forever. We're hearing the promises, but we're not seeing the actual beds or the building.
Well, planning has been approved and I can guarantee the people here listening today that the key enabling works were crucially important to allow for the main construction element of this project. And what we will have when construction starts in 2025, we will have a fit-for-purpose emergency department, but we'll also have an advanced medical assessment unit, which will be up on the second level, and that will have 10 bays. But the key to this is also investing in our primary care system to allow people not to present to the ED in cases where they have minor injuries or their injuries can be dealt with separately. And we have more people now working in our health system than we have pre-COVID. We've over an additional 27,000 staff working in our health.
In fairness, I think money is being spent, but the point is the service on the ground, many are still concerned that they're not getting what they need.
Yes, and again, we need to continue to resource adequately on the ground with nurses, with doctors, consultants, and we are doing that because the facts don't lie. We've over 9,376 additional nurses and midwives in our health service at the minute, with an additional 4,000 in social
at Mayo University.
Yeah.
And that is a challenge. That is a challenge.
You're absolutely right on. The facts don't lie. There was over almost 1,000 cancellations in Mayo University Hospital throughout 2023. That's 1,000 people who had their procedures cancelled in it. We have all the vacancy rates there. Why would, if everything was going okay, why would the INMO be outside protesting? What we don't need is more of the same, and that's what I and Jerry Murray are going to make sure within the county.
Okay.
I think what Rose failed to say earlier was that capital investment will also be happening in North Mayo, in both Belmullet and in Ballina, in terms of an additional 50 unit in Belmullet, and that will provide for short-term and long-term care, which again will free up capacity.
Is there a time frame?
Again, it's gone to the design phase. So these are real projects that have a project life cycle. And it's really important that is stressed, that we need to increase capacity all across the network here in Mayo, and not just at Mayo University Hospital.
That's subject to funding. You have to remember it was Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that closed down the
beds.
But
Rose, you've campaigned about it. This government has delivered about it. This government has delivered it.
Okay, at this point, we'll take a commercial break. We'll be back after the break. And you're welcome back to our election debate. In studio today we have Minister Alan Dillon, Deputy Rose Conway Walsh, and candidate from Castlebar, Stephen Kerr. Now, we have been speaking about a number of issues before the break, but what has come up quite a lot, and we have a lot of questions in from listeners, is why won't the government communicate with communities and be honest when plans are in place to accommodate IPAS, asylum seekers or refugees in new accommodation centres in Mayo communities? Stephen, if I can start with you, I know you're not government, but you were saying this is one of the big issues you're seeing on the doorstep.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about consultation. I can't tell you the amount of emails I've sent to Roderick O'Gorman's department asking various questions about IPAS accommodation in this county, and I don't even get an acknowledgement, never mind a response. Same goes for Alan Dillon, I have to say. Alan, I don't know you personally, I'm sure you're a lovely fella and all that, but I don't get a response when I email your office. And that's the problem. So just to let people know, we're spending €5 million a day on accommodating asylum seekers and refugees. That's not including medical cards or any other expenses, just on the accommodation alone. And every door I knock at, there's so many problems out there. Like, people are just surviving. They're not living their lives. There are so many issues. And yet we have 5 million a day just for starters to throw away on accommodation. The majority of...
I wouldn't call it throwing away. People have to have a place to live.
Well, that's fair enough, you say that. But there was a leaked memo from the Department of Justice stating that the majority of IPAS applicants coming in are economic migrants. Now, as well as that, let me say that 80% of the applicants that arrive at Dublin Airport that fly in, they get on wherever they get on with a passport, and they get off with none. Now, that's a criminal offence. Those people should be detained and should be deported or sent back to wherever they came from. That's an illegal offence, and we're not deporting anywhere near in the numbers that we need to be.
We do need economic migrants, though. We need people to take up jobs. I mean, we were talking about jobs like in the medical field, so many services, everything. We need economic migrants. The country won't survive without them.
So, well, if that's your argument, Teresa, that you want to put to me, well, look, we're stripping all these unfortunate countries of all their doctors and engineers, if that's the case. You know, if they're not all doctors and engineers. As I said, that leaked memo from the Department of Justice said that the majority are economic migrants. They're coming here because we give the best benefits.
Okay, well, Minister Dillon, would you like to respond to that? Your office doesn't respond to a citizen.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm not sure what the issue is there, but listen, I've seen Stephen's platform, and I think certainly he has a focus in relation to migration, but is one that sows division in my eyes, and he tries to divide communities. And what I feel in relation to the immigration challenges is that we do have an obligation under international law and human rights to have an obligation to comply with international law, and I think it's really important to have compassion and empathy to those who are seeking asylum here or protection. And we have made immense progress in relation to reviewing the current regime that's currently in place in terms of trying to get quicker decisions. We've also...
Okay, but why don't you communicate with communities?
Well, there is a community engagement team, and I take, for example, in an international protection centre in close proximity to Castlebar in Brafey, there's been an amazing integration process there in relation to how people have brought this community together, how they've integrated them into the schools, and they actually are providing a service. Many of them are working in retail, in hospitality, and giving back to the community. I think that's key to this discussion, is how we actually support the integration process.
Okay, but the question again, why not communicate? The Minister says there is great communication. People on the ground would indicate that is really what bothers so many people, that they're not getting answers.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think that speaks to the fact that this government have failed on immigration. And they fail to learn from everything in terms of communication with communities. But that's why we have said as well, in terms of the location of bypass, it absolutely should not be developer-led. There has to be an audit of communities. There has to be respect for communities. And the people who are coming into this country and who are legally entitled to be here have to have their human rights upheld as well. And if people aren't entitled to be here, then they have to be sent back safely to their own countries.
So your manifesto is you'll do that much faster?
Oh, there's a proper way of doing this. Let us say there is movement across the thing. Well, we said we would set up an immigration management agency to take control of this. I think part of the problem, Tracy, has been spread over different departments. No, it's not my problem. It's not my responsibility. Nobody is responsible for it. We have to do this in a proper way, in a fair way and an efficient way, and in a way that everybody is treated properly. But communities must be respected. But I do want to say here in Mayo, there are wonderful examples of integration over the years, not just in this recent thing. We had Mayo Intercultural Action before, and in other, and I want to thank those communities for going above and beyond. But there is no point if the services and the supports
and the infrastructure
infrastructure isn't there and isn't front loaded. That should not be the case, and it should not happen. This disjointed thing of people making millions and billions on the backs of the most vulnerable people who are coming in and the most vulnerable communities is not right.
Okay, right, Minister Dillon.
The system needs to be more agile. It needs to be robust. It needs to be rules based, and that our borders need to protect it. And we all agree in relation to that. But our system needs to be firm and fair. And we have made additional measures in terms of the Garda Immigration Bureau. We're now doing doorstep checks on air flights, on risks for those who are coming here undocumented. But we're also ensuring that we have an accelerated decision-making process.
Much done, much to do is what you're saying.
And we've tripled the amount of staff in the International Protection Office in order to get processes and applications and decisions quicker.
Stephen?
All the major parties are trying to act as if they're on the side of the people now with this issue, but it's too late in the day. Regarding Sinn Féin, I can't tell you the number of protests I've been at over the last 2 years where inevitably at some point the chant breaks out, Sinn Féin traitors.
Yeah, incitement to hatred, Stephen. I will not indulge in incitement to hatred.
What are you... Sorry. If you're talking about... Well, if you want to bring up hate speech legislation...
No, incitement to hatred.
I know that, but I want to talk about, now that you brought it up, the hate speech...
Yes, which we voted against.
Yeah, but
you spread lies that we didn't. Let me just make it clear.
To be perfectly honest,
there were 2 votes, and the first one you voted in favour of it.
When we had the 2 weeks ago, only 2 weeks ago, did we or did we not vote against it? Did we or did we not vote against the hate speech bill? Will you answer that, please?
Yes, you did, and that's why you're bringing it up. The first bill, which was... the first bill
which was the Shana that we put in...
Okay, Stephen, just finish your point,
yes. You need to get your facts
right.
right.
All right, Deputy.
Hold on, Rose.
All right.
The first vote, which included the hate speech element, they voted in favour. Sinn Féin voted in favour of it. This is... The hate speech...
Okay, all right, I have to move it on. Literally, our time is up. It flies by and people will have to investigate that more themselves. But in less than a minute now, I'm going to ask each of you, what do you see as your greatest achievement to date for County Mayo, either as an elected representative or as a community activist? Minister Dillon, your single greatest achievement.
My biggest achievement is helping thousands of people right across Mayo over the last 4.5 years through representations made on behalf of the Department of State agencies. I've ensured that every opportunity that Mayo receives its fair share of investment funding through infrastructure, to sporting facilities, community development. And politics for me is all about people. And what I want to do is improve the lives and the communities of the people that I represent.
Stephen?
Unlike my two friends in studio here, I'm not a politician. I've no experience in politics. But what I do have experience in is caring about my community and telling the truth. And what I've done over the last 2 years is tell the truth and tell what is happening in our communities, which these two people beside me here, Minister Dillon and Rose Conway Walsh, have failed to do.
Well, I'd say both are sitting there, so I'll let them speak for themselves, but I will assume they would utterly reject that.
I have never seen them at any protest.
It's about you now, not what they're doing.
Yeah.
Just ask you.
So what I've done is I've engaged the public and I've told them exactly what is going on in their community when their media and when their politicians have failed to do so.
Okay,
you need to tell them the truth.
Deputy Rose Conway.
I would say mine is standing with the families for over 10 years now. The families impacted by pyrite in this county. I fought every step of the way for them, and that's why we guarantee them 100% redress scheme and a full public inquiry into the pyrite
scandal. And many
scandal.
questions have come in on that, but in fairness, we didn't get to them. But thank you to Minister Dillon, to Deputy Rose Conway Walsh, and to Stephen Kerr. On Monday, we're joined by candidates Lisa Chambers, Martina Jennings, and Joe Daly. Thanks for your company.